In the shadow of history, there lies a man whose name has been synonymous with cunning, manipulation, and unrelenting power. Niccolò Machiavelli, a figure so controversial, so enigmatic, that his very name evokes suspicion and awe. But what if the story we've been told about him is incomplete? What if we've misunderstood his true message? Was Machiavelli truly the apostle of power politics, as so many have labeled him? Or was there more beneath the surface of his writings, hidden from the world, waiting to be unearthed? Machiavelli is often reduced to the cold, calculating figure from The Prince, the infamous treatise on how to gain and maintain political power by any means necessary. His advice, pragmatic, ruthless, and even deceitful, seems to endorse manipulation, cruelty, and exploitation of the masses. This image has shaped his legacy, with countless political leaders throughout history turning to his words as a guide for power. But is this fair to him? Was he merely a cynic, advising leaders to crush their enemies at all costs, or was he something else entirely? In this video, we will delve deep into the mind of Machiavelli, exploring the ideas that have made him one of the most controversial thinkers in the history of political philosophy. Did he really believe that the end justifies the means? Was he truly an advocate of power at any cost, a man who saw humanity as nothing more than pawns in a political game? Or was his message one of nuance, a warning of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the harsh realities of political survival? As we uncover the layers of Machiavelli's work, we'll also explore the political climate of his time, an era of instability, corruption, and shifting alliances. How much of Machiavelli's philosophy was shaped by the world around him, and how much was his own deep reflection on the nature of power itself? Was he offering a guide for tyrants, or was he trying to teach the rulers of his time how to avoid the pitfalls that had doomed so many before them? This video is more than just an analysis of Machiavelli's theories. It's a journey into the heart of power, the shadows that surround it, and the choices that define its wielders. We'll examine his most famous works, from The Prince to the Discourses, and critically assess the enduring relevance of his ideas in today's world. As we go deeper, you'll start to question, is it truly correct to say that Machiavelli was an apostle of power politics, or is there more to his philosophy than meets the eye? Stay tuned, because the answers may surprise you. What Machiavelli had to say about power, politics, and the human condition could change the way you look at the world and at yourself. As we step back in time, let's first understand the world in which Machiavelli lived. The late 15th and early 16th centuries were an age of turbulence and transformation. Italy, the land that gave birth to Renaissance art and thought, was also a fractured, divided region. City-states like Florence, Venice, and Milan were constantly at odds, each one vying for control, wealth, and influence. The papacy, too, was deeply embroiled in political intrigues, influencing both religious and secular affairs. It was a world where power shifted like sand beneath one's feet, and survival often meant making tough, uncomfortable decisions. Machiavelli was no mere observer. He was a key player in this political chess game. As a diplomat for the Republic of Florence, he engaged with the most powerful rulers and military leaders of the time. He saw firsthand how alliances could be forged and broken in the blink of an eye, how rulers could rise to power only to fall just as quickly. It's said that he even witnessed the brutal betrayal of his own government. After the fall of the Florentine Republic, he was imprisoned, tortured, and eventually exiled. This personal downfall marked a turning point for Machiavelli, one that would shape his future works and fuel the philosophical inquiries that he would later be known for. Was this tragic turn of events the catalyst that drove him to his harsh view of politics? Was it the bitter lesson of losing power that led him to conclude that the path to political success was paved with pragmatism, not idealism? Or was his perspective more nuanced? What if his writings weren't just about how to hold on to power, but a deeper exploration of what power really means and the cost of acquiring it? As we look closer at The Prince, the treatise that defined Machiavelli's legacy, it's impossible to ignore the moral ambiguity that runs throughout. Machiavelli's advice to princes wasn't to be evil, but to understand the harshness of the world around them. He wasn't advocating for tyranny, but for survival in a brutal, unpredictable landscape. But here's the kicker. Many have misinterpreted his work as a call to ruthlessness, and this interpretation has persisted for centuries. Now, let's consider the irony of it all. The man who wrote so eloquently about the use of cruelty, deception, and force was once a trusted advisor and servant to his republic. Could he have been warning us, urging future leaders to be cautious about the very forces that would ultimately destroy him? Was his cynicism a result of the betrayal he suffered, or a testament to the world he knew all too well? The mystery deepens as we look closer at Machiavelli's other writings, where themes of liberty, republicanism, and virtue emerge, ideas that seem at odds with his most famous work. What did he truly believe about the nature of power? Was he the apostle of power politics, or was there something more complex at play? As we dig deeper into Machiavelli's complex views on power, we begin to uncover layers of contradiction and ambiguity that have sparked endless debate among scholars and political thinkers. At the core of his writings, there's a tension between the pragmatism of power and the moral consequences of wielding it. His exploration of the ends justifying the means suggests that leaders must make tough decisions for the greater good. But what happens when that greater good is built on manipulation, betrayal, and violence? How far can a ruler go before losing their own humanity in the pursuit of control? But let's take a step back and look at the alternative perspective. What if Machiavelli wasn't merely playing the role of a cynical strategist, as so many have assumed, but was instead wrestling with the very concept of power? Imagine a man who had seen the rise and fall of rulers firsthand, the fleeting nature of glory, the ease with which people can turn from allies to enemies. Was he simply being realistic, or was he warning against the seductive nature of power itself? On the other hand, we have to consider the idea that Machiavelli's personal life influenced his harsh assessments of politics. His fall from grace and his time spent in exile must have colored his view of political institutions and the rulers who held sway over them. Was his advice to future rulers shaped by bitterness, a desire for revenge, or a genuine hope that they would avoid the same pitfalls he faced? What if The Prince he wrote for wasn't meant to be an ideal leader, but rather a cautionary tale, one where the line between morality and power is always in danger of being crossed? And still, the question lingers, was he truly an apostle of power politics? Or was Machiavelli, in his own way, questioning whether anyone could truly wield power without losing themselves in the process? The conflict is far from resolved. It's a question of survival in a world that doesn't reward virtue. But what's the cost of surviving at any price? The answers are still hidden, buried beneath layers of theory and history. And as we continue, we'll see how the story of Machiavelli's life and his writings holds a mirror to our own world today, one that is still deeply influenced by the complexities of power, manipulation, and leadership. As the debate surrounding Machiavelli's true intentions continues, we are forced to confront the ultimate question: what was his purpose in writing The Prince? Was he offering a cold, calculating blueprint for tyranny, or was he giving a warning about the corrosive nature of unchecked power? It's a question that not only haunts the pages of his writings, but also leaves us wondering about the world he was living in, a world where the very fabric of trust was unraveling, where betrayal and ambition were a constant threat. Machiavelli's life was a testament to the dangers of political failure. After his exile, he found himself alone, desperate to regain his position and the power he had lost. The bitterness of betrayal weighed heavily on him, and it's tempting to believe that his writings were driven by a need for revenge, a desire to expose the fragile nature of political alliances. Could it be that the prince was a reflection of his own disillusionment, a manifestation of his personal pain, rather than a call for leaders to follow his example? And yet, as we dig deeper, we see the recurring themes of virtue and republicanism in Machiavelli's other works. These ideas seem to contradict the image of a man who simply advocated for manipulation and deceit. It's as if he were trying to reconcile two competing visions, the practical reality of power and the ethical ideals that he believed could guide a just society. But how could someone so acutely aware of the dangers of power ever truly support the ruthless pursuit of it? This tension builds to a climax that we cannot yet resolve. The more we examine his writings, the more questions arise. Was Machiavelli an apostle of power politics, or was he merely a man who had seen too much, trying to warn us about the price of ambition? The answers lie in the final pieces of his philosophy, which are waiting to be uncovered. But before we get there, the stakes grow higher. The battle between the ideal and the real is about to reach its boiling point, and Machiavelli's legacy hangs in the balance. As we continue to unravel the layers of Machiavelli's philosophy, a new, unsettling question begins to emerge. What if we've been asking the wrong questions all along? Could it be that the true nature of Machiavelli's work was not just about power, but about the people who wield it and the price they pay for it? The more we dig into his life and writings, the more it becomes clear that he wasn't simply a man of theory. He was a man who understood the human cost of power, perhaps better than anyone else. We're used to thinking of Machiavelli as a detached observer, a man who wrote for princes, advising them on how to conquer and maintain their kingdoms. But what if that's not the full story? What if, behind the strategic genius, there was an individual haunted by the very lessons he was trying to teach? Could the man who urged rulers to make tough decisions, who spoke so bluntly about the use of cruelty and deception, have been secretly warning them about the psychological toll of power? Could Machiavelli have been speaking not just as a political theorist, but as someone who had experienced the isolation, the betrayal, and the fear that comes with holding power? Now consider this. What if Machiavelli was not just reflecting the cold realities of politics, but predicting the fate of the very leaders he advised? What if he saw in them a tragic flaw that they couldn't even recognize in themselves, a deep vulnerability that power exposed but could never heal? As the tension rises, we begin to see a dark irony at play. The more powerful the ruler, the more susceptible they become to the forces of manipulation and betrayal they themselves set in motion. Power, it seems, is not just a tool to be used. It is a force that, over time, turns in on itself, devouring those who seek to control it. Machiavelli's ultimate warning, then, may not have been for the rulers themselves, but for the rest of us. What if his writings were meant to show us how fragile the systems of power are, how easily they crumble under the weight of their own machinations? The deeper we look into Machiavelli's life, the more we realize that we might be witnessing a man who understood the cost of ambition in a way that no ruler ever could. Was he, in fact, a prophet of political demise? The stakes are growing higher, and the truth is slipping further out of reach as Machiavelli's lessons become more unsettling with every page we turn. The final twist may be closer than we think, but can we even trust the narrative we've constructed so far? As we reach the culmination of our journey through Machiavelli's world, it becomes clear that the conflict we've been unraveling wasn't just about the nature of power or the advice given to rulers. It's about the consequences of power itself, and how those who seek to control it can often be consumed by it. The more we explore Machiavelli's works, the more we understand that his true message was far more tragic than many realize. His writings were not a guide to conquer and maintain power at all costs, but a grim reflection on the soul-crushing weight that power imposes on those who wield it. Machiavelli, a man who had seen the rise and fall of governments, understood the fragility of political systems better than anyone. But it was in his final, most personal moments that the key to understanding his work truly became clear. What if, in the end, The Prince wasn't a treatise for rulers at all? What if it was his way of exposing the inner torment of a man who had lost everything to the very system he sought to protect? The true revelation is that Machiavelli wasn't just a theorist. He was a man who had seen firsthand how quickly power could be taken from him and used to destroy the ideals he believed in. In his later works, particularly in the Discourses, Machiavelli revisits themes of virtue, republicanism, and the importance of the common good. These ideas stand in stark contrast to the ruthless pragmatism of The Prince. The conflict between these two works, The Prince and the Discourses, suggests that Machiavelli wasn't advocating for tyranny at all. Instead, he was warning of its dangers. He was offering us a window into the brutal consequences of absolute power, knowing full well that those who held it were often the most vulnerable. But just as we begin to settle on this understanding, an unexpected twist emerges. The final piece of the puzzle reveals itself in the most shocking way. Machiavelli's own downfall wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was the very thing he had warned about. He had spent his life trying to navigate the brutal politics of his time, only to fall victim to the same forces he had tried to understand. His exile, his betrayal, and his ultimate disillusionment with power show us the true cost of the game he had spent his life studying. But here's the twist. Perhaps Machiavelli, in his ultimate despair, was not just trying to teach rulers how to avoid power's ruinous grip. He was showing us, through his own life, that the greatest danger of all might not be losing power. It might be the cost of gaining it in the first place. The lesson is more profound than we could have imagined, and it leaves us questioning whether anyone can truly survive the ruthless world of politics. The game of power, it seems, is one that doesn't have a winner. As we reflect on the twists and turns of Machiavelli's life and writings, we arrive at a profound realization. His legacy was never just about power or politics. It was about understanding the human condition, the desires, fears, and compromises that come with holding power. Machiavelli's personal downfall wasn't the tragic end of a political theorist who failed. It was the final act in a cautionary tale about the cost of ambition. His works, especially The Prince, were not simply guides for rulers to become more effective or ruthless. They were reflections on the price of power, the moral dilemmas it creates, and the way it consumes both the ruler and the ruled. In his quest to understand the true nature of power, Machiavelli exposed a paradox that many of us still struggle with today. The more we seek control, the more we risk losing ourselves in the process. His life and writings become a mirror for modern leaders, and even for each of us, as we navigate the often murky waters of ambition and influence. Power, it seems, is not just about dominating others. It's about holding on to our humanity in the face of overwhelming temptation. The key takeaway is that the pursuit of power comes at a high cost, and understanding this reality is the first step toward avoiding its most devastating consequences. As we close this chapter, we must acknowledge that Machiavelli's work remains as relevant today as it was in his time. His exploration of political realities, moral compromises, and the human struggle for dominance continues to resonate in our modern world, where power dynamics shape every aspect of our lives, from government to business to social relationships. But perhaps the most enduring message he left us is this: while power can be wielded, it cannot be fully controlled. And in the end, those who seek to master it must first confront the cost of their ambition. So as we leave Machiavelli's world behind, we are left with more questions than answers. Did he truly understand the nature of power, or was he merely warning us about its dangers? Perhaps the answer is more complex than we could ever fully grasp. What we do know is that the true power lies not in the pursuit of dominance, but in understanding the cost that comes with it, and the courage to resist when the price becomes too high. Machiavelli's legacy, after all, might not be in the advice he gave, but in the questions he forced us to ask. And those questions, it seems, will continue to echo through the corridors of history.